Hi, and welcome back to Purple Collar Life. This video is for anyone who's ever wondered, should I get a lawn tractor or a zero-turn mower? And is there much difference between a John Deere, a Kubota, and a Toro brand? Does brand matter? Does it matter which kind of machine? Now, of course, we're going to know that a zero-turn is going to mow faster. So that's right up front. But in this video, I compare 22 elements of having a lawn tractor, a different brand of lawn tractor, and a zero-turn mower. I'm going to talk about all those in this video. I have mowed with each one of these, I've changed the oil in each one of these, and I've done spring maintenance on each one of these machines. And I'm going to talk about all the things that everyone's been asking about the John Deere X300, the Kubota T1870, and the Toro TIMECUTTER. Let's get started. We're going to talk about things like comfort. We're going to talk about things like dashboard controls. But our first category, the thing we'll get out of the bag here right up front, is mowing speed. And I'll go through each one of these machines talking a little bit about each point I bring up. But in third place for mowing speed is the X300. And let me tell you why that is. It's not because it's a slow moving tractor. The hydrostatic drive is actually fairly fast. It's a limitation of the deck size. This has the Edge 42-inch deck, and with that narrow deck, it just takes a lot longer to mow. So for example, for our front yard, I can do that with the Toro TIMECUTTER almost half the amount of time that it takes us with the John Deere X300. And again, not a limitation of the speed of the machine, limitation of the size of the deck. In second place for mowing speed is this Kubota T1870. About the exact same hydrostatic speed forward. The difference with this is you've got that 48-inch deck. This has the fabricated 48-inch deck. It's got 3 blades on it. Can mow a little bit faster just because of that added width. Really no comparison here. Easily in first place on mowing speed is the Toro TIMECUTTER. Zero-turn mowers just mow a lot faster. This has the 60-inch fabricated deck, so I can get pretty wide swaths. And like I said, this mows almost twice as fast as that John Deere X300 with the 42-inch deck. Now, the other thing I'll note is we did take the John Deere to the cemetery. We mow a small cemetery, and we actually stopped midway through because it was taking us so long with that compared to with this. So I came back, picked this up, hauled it to the cemetery, finished the mowing with the Toro TIMECUTTER. Our next category is mowing quality. Once again, the John Deere X300 gets third place. But again, that's because of the 42-inch deck. In my personal opinion, the 42-inch deck with the 2-blade system does not give you as good of a cut as a 3-blade mower deck. So in second place, the Kubota gets second place for cut quality. That's a result of this nice 3-blade deck, and that Kubota deck does a really nice job. This one actually has the mulching baffles in it, and you'd think maybe that would, inhibit the cut quality a little bit, but it does a great job, keeps right up with the speed I want to go, and very impressed with the cut quality of this Kubota. Second place. First place for cut quality goes to the Toro TIMECUTTER. I know what you're already thinking, the Toro is going to win every category. I can assure you that is not the case. There are some categories you'll see that the Toro is not number one in. But for cut quality, it is number one, and it's mainly because of that nice 3-blade system. Kind of levels out some of those uneven areas in the yard where maybe if you had a smaller deck, you'd see little dips and divots where the deck kind of cuts in a little bit more with a narrower deck. This levels all that out a little bit wider. And the blade tip speed on these blades is incredible. So with all that blade tip speed, you get a good, nice cut. The power behind us throws that grass out nice and far. It actually does a pretty good job of munching up the leaves and the grass without even having a mulching kit on this machine. The next category is ride comfort, and in this category, the Toro TIMECUTTER gets third place. Our yard is not smooth and level, and even though there are some springs underneath this seat, it is not a soft ride across that yard, especially when you're going in the rabbit speed, full throttle moving ahead. It'll mow that fast, but it'll really jiggle you around. Sometimes it's almost like being on one of those mechanical bulls trying to stay on this thing across a rough yard. So third place for the Toro TIMECUTTER for ride comfort. You do have these armrests, but I rarely ever get to use them when I'm running the controls. In second place for ride comfort, the X300 by John Deere. Now this is a replacement covered seat, and this makes all the difference in the world. You can see there is some springiness to it, but this is a much better seat than the original material that's on the John Deere seat. So a lot of credit goes to the person that reupholstered this. But it is a nice, comfortable ride, more cushion than the zero turn, and I think these tires do a little bit better on the rough terrain and kind of smoothing things out. So second place, the John Deere. In first place for ride comfort, head and shoulders above the rest, is the Kubota T1870, and it's all because of this cushion ride. I've never ridden on a lawn tractor like this before, but there is a suspension between the axle and the body of this machine. So you can see these springs in here, kind of like a four-wheeler. That really smooths out the ride. In fact, on our rough yard, I can travel across this, and it's a very comfortable ride on the Kubota machine. Easily first place in this category. Our next category is navigation and agility. Third place in this category goes to the Kubota. It does have, regular steering wheel steering. I find it to be a little bit loose, so that could just be a result of that, a little bit looser steering, but it doesn't steer as tight in my hard rights and hard lefts as the John Deere, and I'll show you that. Second place for navigation and agility goes to this John Deere X300. It'll do amazingly tight turns for being a lawn tractor. When you cut the wheel hard in one direction, look at how tight those wheels turn. So it does a really nice job. Obviously not as good as the zero turn at getting close to trees and obstacles, but a very close second place. Definitely one of the advantages of a zero-turn mower is the ability to be agile and navigate around obstacles. That's part of what makes these mow so fast. In addition to straight line speed, you can really go around obstacles quicker with a zero-turn. With the 60-inch deck that sticks this wide out and the ability to make those sharp turns, I can get pretty close to just about any obstacle. So first place goes to the Toro TimeCutter. I can get so close that I actually mowed over a couple of Jennifer's perennials accidentally, trying to get close enough to a tree. Oops. Our next category is ease of driving and using. I'm on the Kubota. This one gets third place for a couple reasons. The parking brake is a little bit tricky to get. So to set the parking brake, you want to push this brake, then with your toe, push that lever behind it, kind of release your foot like that so it holds it in place. Once you get the hang of it, it is not hard, but figuring out how to do it at first and then getting used to it is a little bit more difficult. We also have this treadle pedal, which some people may love if you're used to that system, but if you're not used to it, it is a little bit more difficult to do the treadle forward and backward. Than what you're used to if you're used to a two-pedal system like on a John Deere. Since I'm so used to the 2210, this would take some getting used to in the long term for me. It's that leaning backward with the heel that's a little bit troublesome. This machine also, not that it's difficult, but it does have the manual PTO release. And the controls are all easy enough to use. They just aren't quite what I would say as easy as the John Deere. One of the really nice things about this machine as far as controls though is this reverse button. You press it one time while you're mowing and it'll let you back up and mow as many times as you want to. The Toro TimeCutter is going to get second place in this category, ease of use. It takes a little bit of practice to learn how to drive a zero turn if you're not used to that. We actually made a video about it. I'll put a link to that up above. As far as controls, there's nothing complicated about them. They're beside you here as you're seated. You've got your throttle, your choke, electronic PTO engagement rather than mechanical, and your switch. In first place for ease of use is the John Deere. I like all these controls. You can see the throttle and choke are here. Easy to just throttle up and choke when you're starting up. You have this button over here that holds your mower deck up. Here's your parking brake. Engage and disengage that right here. You've got your electronic PTO switch, but really my favorite is this cruise control. So if you're driving along at a particular speed, your foot at a level, you just lift up on the cruise control and it holds you at that speed. Holds that pedal down right where I had it. Now, one of the most annoying things on this particular unit is to mow in reverse. You have to lift this up before you start backing up every single time you touch that reverse pedal. Our next category is power. In third place, the John Deere has the least amount of power in the group with its 17 horsepower Kawasaki engine. Now, I think this is a great engine, and 17 horsepower is plenty for this 42-inch deck. But if you had one of the larger decks, I think this would struggle. There is noticeably more power in the 19 horsepower Kubota with that Kohler engine. Now, again, we're turning a 48-inch deck on this one with 3 blades. And with the most power in our test, 24.5 horsepower from this commercial V-twin Toro engine. Now, I know some people avoid this engine. They don't like the Toro brand engine. I've had no problems with it, and it's got tons of power. Our next category is the ability to mow in wet areas. In third place, the Toro TimeCutter. Definitely not easy to mow in wet areas. This thing will get stuck and just a little bit of water, a little bit of mud. There's just those nice wide tires are nice to not create ruts, but they get you very little traction in any mud. These front wheels dig way in, and the weight of that 60-inch fabricated deck is kind of a hindrance when you're traveling through wet areas. Tied for first and second because they're both better than the Toro TimeCutter, but still not great in a wet area, the John Deere X300 and the Kubota T1870. They do navigate better in wet areas, and I'd much rather take my chances on one of these machines than the zero turn in a muddy area, but still they're not going to do as well as something with more ag tires. These both have turf tires front and back. They do, like I said, better than the TimeCutter, but not as good as something a little bit more set up for wet grounds. Our next category is the ability to tow a cart or a little utility trailer behind you. You can see the Toro TimeCutter does have a hitch, but I'll tell you that it is not easy to tow with this because a lot of times when you're towing, you got to back that little cart up, and backing things up with a zero turn is just not as easy as with a steering wheel on a lawn tractor. In second place, the John Deere. You do have that steering wheel that makes backing things up a little bit easier. You do have a hitch down here on the bottom. It's not super thick metal down here, so I wouldn't put, a 2-inch ball through here and try to move a regular utility trailer with something on it, but it'll tow your little lawn cart just fine. And in first place, the Kubota. It's got a little bit thicker metal, or at least it feels a little bit beefier down here. Again, I wouldn't tow, something heavy with it, but it does a nice job of towing a little cart. And I think that maybe because of the suspension, but I find that when you're towing a cart with this, it's not as bumpy as it is with the John Deere. So we talked a little bit about steering in the category about navigation and agility, but I would say that third place overall for just steering ability goes to the Kubota. It's a little bit harder to steer, even at speed, than the John Deere. Second place goes to the Toro TimeCutter. Plenty easy to steer, but you've got to learn how to do that in order to not run over things, make the turn at the right radius, and not scuff up your yard with those back tires. So that means in first place, steering goes to the X300. I find this a nice and tight steering system, tight turns, and if you move the steering wheel a little bit, the wheels move a little bit. So the easiest to steer in my mind, the John Deere. For our next category, we're going to talk about the noise level. You can see I have a decibel meter on my phone. I'm going to put it right here where I'm sitting on the machine, and you'll see, or I'll capture the noise level and let you know how loud each machine is. Noise level, just ambient noise out here if I'm not talking. is about 48 to 50. Now I'm going to start each machine up and I'll tell you what the noise level is just running at full throttle and then turning the belts and the blades on. Now I think this is going to be third place because it always seems like the loudest. You'll see I've got my headphones on. I always wear my headphones when on the zero-turn mower. Okay, running at full throttle, we are at about 88 to 90. Turn the deck on. The deck on, we are at about 95, 96. Next up is the Kubota. I'm giving this second place for noise level. I think it's the second loudest. It's got a unique muffler system here. This is stock, that's the OEM muffler. It's got a little bit of a throaty noise to it. Sounds great, but it is, I think, louder than the John Deere. Let's give it a test run here. This is a cold start on an 88-degree day. So we'll throttle up. About 87. And we will lift the deck up all the way and turn on our power takeoff. Remember, this is a mechanical release. We are at about 93, 94. Next up, I think first place. This always seems like the quietest when I'm mowing on it. The John Deere, again, a cold start on an 80-some degree day. You can probably hear that sounds quieter already. We'll throttle up. Full throttle, only about 81. Now I'm going to lift the deck up all the way because I don't want to catch any rocks, and turn the mower on here. But I have the parking brake off. Jennifer, watch, just make sure any rocks don't come out. And turning the mower deck on. About 93. So they're all actually pretty close, much closer than I would have thought. The TimeCutter always seems the loudest because that engine is right behind you the whole time you're mowing. The Kubota seems the next to the loudest, and it was the next to the loudest in decibel readings. But for me, when I'm mowing on it, the John Deere seems the quietest. Our next category is oil change ease. So, maintenance you're going to do at least once a season, probably more times than that. Number 3, third place, goes to the Kubota. It's got what they've called this lower bonnet underneath the hood. You've got to remove this entire thing to get to that oil filter. It adds some unnecessary time to the oil change. It's not difficult, but you do remove 4 knobs. You got to tilt the hood back down, slide that forward, tip the hood back up, get that filter up, get that filter out. I also found that as far as draining the oil, this was the most difficult plug to get out to make that drain, and it made the biggest mess because it doesn't stick out quite far enough beyond the frame. Very easy oil change with the John Deere because when you lift up the hood, you're lifting up the side panel too. You can see the oil filter is right here, easy to just grab and switch off there. And look at this nice knob on the oil drain. Just a finger twist and you're draining, and it's draining clear out here, so you're not getting that all over the frame. Great system. In first place for easiest oil changes, the Toro TimeCutter. You just pull this tube down off and you're draining out here over the side, nowhere near your frame, so that's nice and easy. Your filter's right here, you can just grab it and twist it. A little side note, it's also the easiest to check and clean the air filter because it's right here. You just open up the lid, you can visually see it, you can replace it if you need to. No extra turning or twisting to get to that. Next category is ease of changing the belt. In third place, just barely, the Toro TimeCutter. It's not easy to remove the deck on a zero turn, so that's what makes this a little bit more difficult. You can see the deck is pretty big here, so to actually drop it and pull it out is a little bit more complicated than one of the smaller decks on the other machines. In a close second place, almost tied for third, the John Deere X300, because it's one belt. One belt goes from the PTO back to the deck and then loops between the blades of the deck. So one long belt does that whole circle rather than a belt from the PTO to the deck and a separate belt just doing the blades. In first place for belt change ease goes to the Kubota. Pretty easy to remove this deck, just slide it out from under the machine. It uses a separate belt just to drive the 3 blades of the deck from the PTO belt, and then a separate belt for the driveline. Now I just washed this yesterday just for the video. It's not normally this clean. In third place in the category of keeping it clean, the Toro TIMECUTTER. This thing gets filthy all the time. I'm not the best at keeping things clean, especially when I use it so regularly, but the front wheel throws slop onto the deck here. The back wheel throws slop onto the deck here. The fenders don't come out far enough, so all of this gets slop all over it. And like I said at another point, driving in wet areas, this is the worst. I get this thing stuck pretty often, and when you do get it stuck, you throw mud everywhere. So on top of the engine, on the seat, up where your feet are, this entire thing is typically caked with grass and mud. Tied for first place in the keeping it clean category, the John Deere and the Kubota. You can see we've got some wider fenders here, and that keeps all that mud from the tires from flying up on you and the rest of the machine. Now you may get some here in the wheel wells, but it doesn't get all over everything else. It does throw some mud and grass onto the deck, but it's easily blown off of here with some compressed air. Both machines do equally well at keeping fairly clean, at least above the deck level. Our next category is cup holders and storage. On the Kubota, this is it. Tiny little cup holder, only a couple inches deep, if that. You can't put very big of a glass of water or a tumbler in there. It won't stay in and it won't fit in. So last place in storage goes to the Kubota. In second place, and quite a bit better than the Kubota, is the John Deere X300. You've got a much deeper cup holder here. It even has a handle cut out, so if you've got your coffee mug, you can set it down in here. You have an additional storage place behind it for your phone or whatever else you need to keep in here. And I like that both of them have cut out drains through, so the water's not going to sit in there when you wash it, if it's in the rain, or if your coffee spills. In first place when it comes to storage, the Toro TIMECUTTER, we do have a nice cup holder here. Pretty deep, probably 4 inches deep or so. It's got the handle cut out for your coffee mug. A little bit of storage behind it there. The problem is you can never take your hands off the controls long enough to get a drink of anything unless you actually physically stop mowing with a zero-turn mower. At least I can't. There's another storage bin right here. This is where I keep my bungee cord. My bungee cord holds the chute to the deck up when I'm loading in the trailer. I also always keep my 3M headphones in here. So if you're looking for a good set of headphones, I'll put an Amazon affiliate link down. These are my favorite ones. These are Bluetooth, AM, FM radio, so you can connect it to your phone and take calls, but you can also listen to the radio. Definitely my favorite. And then, that's not all. There's more storage here at the front of the machine, and I even left the tag on here because I liked it. Says built-in storage, because why not? Here you go, a little cubby here underneath the seat. Just additional storage for whatever you may need to put in there. Next category, nighttime use and headlights. In third place, because it doesn't have any, the Toro TIMECUTTER. No headlights on this. There is an aftermarket light option you can add on to this. There's also no lights on the dash. So if you were mowing at nighttime, you wouldn't have any lighting for the operator to see or any forward lighting. In second place, the Kubota mower. It does have lights. They're not super bright. At nighttime, you can see the area in front of you, maybe 5 to 10 feet, not much further than that. You do have a dash light here that shows us that they're kind of like a check engine light. And our reverse awareness system does have a light when we're mowing. Definitely in first place when it comes to lights, the John Deere X300. Very bright headlights. At nighttime, you can see a good 10, 20, maybe 30 feet in front of you while mowing with this, so they're way brighter than the Kubota. As far as dash lighting though, there is still no dash lighting here, but I'll take forward lighting over dash lighting any day. Next category is fuel fill. These all are in really good shape as far as the width of the mouth. Really easy to pour fuel into here. You don't have to worry about getting the spout into a tiny little hole. So that's nice. But in third place, just because it's very hard to see how much fuel you have left in the tank, the John Deere X300. So easy to fill, hard to see what you have left. There is a little bit of translucency, if that's a word, back here. And there's these little markers that tell you, look for the sloshing gas. We are maybe at this level. I think that's about half a tank, but it's not super easy to see. The Kubota's next. Again, nice wide fill cap, and I like that they're at the back of the machine. You're not trying to lift the hood or put the gas somewhere else. Very easy access here. But just like the John Deere, only slightly better. The fuel level system here on the back, you can see it sticks a little bit further out, so you can kind of see it a little bit better, but it's still hard to see exactly where the fuel level is in that tank. In first place, the Toro TIMECUTTER. Again, nice big cap, and you can't lose the cap because it's attached. But what I really like about the TIMECUTTER is right here on the front of the machine, while I'm mowing, I can glance down at this little indicator on the tank, and I can see where my fuel level is. I am totally full, so I'm actually above the level right now. But as you use fuel, this gets lighter up above and stays darker down below. The next category is fuel use. In third place, the Toro TIMECUTTER. If you've never mowed on a zero-turn mower before with a gas engine and 2 hydraulic drives, the TIMECUTTER uses a lot of gasoline. In fact, surprisingly a lot of gasoline. So if you're not used to filling up the gas tank a little bit more often, that's something you'll have to get used to with a zero-turn mower. Now it does mow significantly faster too, so you're getting the yard or whatever you're mowing done a lot faster, but you're using more gasoline doing it. In second place, the Kubota with its 19 horsepower engine uses far less gas than the zero-turn, but takes longer to mow. The machine that uses the least gas in my experience is the John Deere X300. This has the 17 horsepower Kawasaki engine, and it kind of sips gas. So I can mow, the front yard and the backyard and not have to refill, whereas on the TIMECUTTER, I'm filling up in between mowing sections of the yard. This John Deere X300 was made between 2006 and 2013. The Kubota T1870, according to the book, was made between 2002 and 2007, and our Toro TIMECUTTER is a 2020 model. But these are all in about the same price range. So for, at the time of purchase, these were between $3,000 and $5,000 for each machine. So that is, if you're looking for the price of a machine like this. On the used market, they're significantly lower, but if you're looking new, these are all machines that cost you somewhere in that range. Now this is not a big box store mower. You'll see the X and the X series are usually only supplied by dealerships. You can't get these John Deere at like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Tractor Supply. These are only available at the dealership. Same thing with this Kubota. These Kubota lawn tractors are only available at dealerships. Now the Toro TIMECUTTER, you can get it at a dealership or at one of the box stores. Next category is value retention. Zero turns don't seem to hold their value as much as lawn tractors. And I think that's because a lot of people use these commercially or semi-commercially. They rack up hours pretty quickly. And quite honestly, they're not that careful with them. You'll see them a lot of times, they're pretty beat up. So as far as the value of a used zero-turn mower, they seem to be lower than the value of a used name brand lawn tractor. For example, this Kubota, sold at a dealership, is still now, after all these years, quite valuable. So someone might find this on the used market and love that it's got the fabricated deck, it's the Kubota name, it's sold at a dealership, and it is that kind of level up from what you'd see at a box store. Same thing with the John Deere, especially in our area. We're kind of in John Deere country around here. People love their green tractors, so this X300 really held its value over time. Our next category is ease of trailering and, attaching this to a trailer. So the nice thing about the John Deere X300 with the 42-inch deck is it's nice and narrow. You don't need a very wide trailer to haul this. You could haul this on a 4-foot wide trailer. The problem is it's hard to strap it down to something. So you can see this front axle isn't very big and isn't very thick. and I was afraid to hook a strap around this and pull forward on it. I strapped it hooking into these points right here. Now I'm not sure if that's the best place or if you'd be better off up here in the bumper, but I put a hook through one of these holes and pulled forward from both front sides. And tie down on the back, I just tied here to the hitch point, which means that from a single point I was pulling left and right. It does have these hooks here, but I don't have hooks big enough to span this much gap. So this was my best point at the back end here. Kubota's second place in the ability to tie it down and trailer it. Front axle is a box steel, a little bit thicker. I was okay putting a soft strap around here for a short distance, and that was my tie down point there. You can see there is nothing else up here to tie off to, no holes to put anything through. But they make up for that on the back. You've got these two holes that are nicely spaced more towards the outside. I could easily get my ratchet strap hook through this and pull right, and this and pull left. The easiest as far as tie downs is the time cutter. I can put my soft straps right here around the front axle, if you will, or sometimes I just put hooks from here to the side. There's also good tie down points in the back, but the problem with this is you have to have a wide trailer. You've got a 60-inch deck plus another 12 to 14 inches here for that chute, so you need something pretty wide. When I trailer it, I actually have to hold the chute up because our enclosed trailer isn't wide enough for the chute to be down. So I tie down the back of the time cutter with these holes right here. I just run my strap, my hook around here, and then back to each side. Our next category is deck height adjustment. In third place is the Kubota. You do have this nice adjustment knob here, easy to look down and see what my height is. I'm at 3.5 inches. The hard thing about the Kubota is you're lifting that fabricated deck weight, plus in this case, the mulching baffles inside it, more steel, with your arm. And that is a heavy lift for someone with their arm. It's a pretty good workout. So, you know, if your arm was a little weaker, or if you had shoulder injury or something like that, this would be hard to do. In second place, the John Deere X300. Here is your deck height gauge. Really easy to adjust. You just turn this knob. And lifting the deck doesn't require your arms at all. You push this pedal, and that raises and lowers your deck. And when you are not mowing and you want to hold the deck up, there's this nice lock-in position. So you push it down, hold this up, your deck is now locked up. On the Toro TIMECUTTER, first place, once again, you're lifting it with your leg, which is nice, and you're also adjusting your pin at the same time. So lift up, I want to mow at 3 inches, lower down. Very simple to use, and again, leg strength rather than arm strength. Our next category is deck quality. Third place in this one goes to the John Deere X300 with this particular Edge 42-inch deck. This is a stamped steel deck. It's fairly thick, but not super thick. It does have a nice edge here to kind of protect it, but you can see there is, you know, unless you pull these out, there's no adjustment on these wheels. This one's actually been welded or reattached at some point because these do catch on things and it's hard to keep them adjusted. You also only have 2 rollers on this deck, front left and front right. Nothing in the middle, nothing on the back. That's why this gets third place. In second place for deck quality is the Toro TIMECUTTER. Very thick deck, nice fabricated deck, but again, no up and down adjustment on these guide wheels or anti-scalp wheels. There are 3 of them, one on the outside left, outside right, and dead center, but no adjustment. And you can see this one is bent because I do catch this on a root or something from time to time, and since you can't adjust it, it just ends up bending out. In first place for deck quality, the Kubota. This nice 48-inch fabricated deck, very thick steel, and as you can see, 3 rollers in the front, 2 rollers in the back. So that anti-scalping is really helped by the fact there are 5 rollers on this deck, and these are also easily adjusted. You can see there's a pin here we can pull and adjust these dolly wheels up and down as necessary. Now, each one of these lawn mowers has an hour meter on it, and people will ask, what is the life expectancy? That's kind of a loaded question. It depends on how you take care of a machine. These machines, This one has 418 hours on it. This one has 543, and our Toro TimeCutter has less than 100. But I expect each one of these engines, if properly maintained, would last 1,500 to 2,000 running hours. So lots of life left in all three of these machines, again, as long as you take care of them and don't abuse them. Now I know that was probably a lot of information to digest, but I enjoy making this video because I like learning about these different pieces of equipment. So for me, the John Deere X300, the Kubota T1870, and the Toro TimeCutter, all three much better machines than you would buy at, a low price point at a box store. These are going to last you longer, they're going to perform better. And it used to be you'd buy a garden tractor, those would pass from generation to generation. I don't know if there are as many machines today that will do that, but definitely a well-built machine like this Kubota probably stands the best chance of something like that. Same thing with the John Deere, if it's well maintained, chance of maybe you pass this on to the next generation. If you found this video informative or entertaining, we would appreciate if you give us a thumbs up. Leave those comments down below. What do you mow with, and what do you think about the comparison between a lawn tractor or a zero-turn mower? I think there's a time and place for each. I think if I were having to make a decision based on just the amount of time it takes to cut, I'd probably pick the zero-turn. But if I'm choosing just on ride comfort, maybe one of these other two machines. If I'm towing a cart around a lot, probably one of these other two machines. So it really depends on what you're looking for and what you need in your situation. Leave those comments down below, your favorite mower. Look forward to reading every single one of those, and then we'll see you again the next time here on Purple Collar Life.